Kappei has just released Arc 9 Chapter 27, and this video will be a summary of the chapter. Highly recommend you check out my Arc 9 26 summary. Anyways, let's begin. Twin swords slashed at the body. However, Wilhelm mutters weak at his sloppy technique. The weight of the years covered him with shame. If he was an artist or poet, age would bring him more skill and experience. With swordsmanship, it was the opposite. That alone was maddening. When he first stepped down to be a royal guard captain, when the White Well took his wife only for him to be weakened when the time came to avenge her, this frustration rivaled the only time during the Demi-Human War when he found out that Teresia was the Sword Saint. Weak. In a world where strength was everything, being weak was an unforgivable sin. No matter about talent or laziness, none of it matters when you stand in the arena of strength. The one who wields a sword cannot make excuses. No, there are some swords who choose its wielder, and the one who wields that sword stands atop of the world, and that's why Wilhelm must surpass that person. Despite Wilhelm's harsh assessment on himself, his swordsmanship was nearing his prime. The enemy he faced was no doubt a very skilled shinobi who trained hard, yet in battles, effort isn't awarded. The girl hanged upside down, blood dripping from her chest, but that was reason for caution, because her torso was not split in two. In a life or death battle, there was no room for mercy. Age, gender, nothing matters. The fact that she was alive meant that she somehow moved and survived, or maybe it was Wilhelm's sloppy technique. The girl moaned, and Wilhelm and her locked eyes. Wilhelm knew that she could no longer fight. His years of experience told him this. The girl was trying to bluff to pretend that she could still fight. Wilhelm told her to surrender, as Al will be captured soon. Wilhelm knew that Al was doing this after Priscilla's death. Wilhelm could understand Al. After all, to lose a loved one and to have your body and soul in anguish. Wilhelm knew it all too well. However, Wilhelm could not let that anguish destroy the world, which meant that he had to stop them. "You're despicable," the girl mutters. "Not only was I no help, I just got in the way." Tears might have accompanied her words. The regret came from her heart. Wilhelm hears a loud thud and realizes it is Felt. He jumps out of the hole and sees Felt strung mid-air with the threads constricting her neck. Ye had set a time-triggered mechanism to hang Felt. It was insurance to use Felt as an unintended casualty, meaning if the fight dragged on too long, Wilhelm would be caught off guard. However, the fight ended too soon, and Felt at this point couldn't escape from the wires, and Ye was too injured to move anyway. Wilhelm thinks of the words that the girl muttered, the idea of the girl getting in the way. Wilhelm understands. It wasn't about the battle itself, it was the insurance policy, the fact that Felt would be killed. Felt mutters a word, stating, "Run." A second later, a massive dragon arm punched Wilhelm from the side. The scene changes. To release a Sin Archbishop, Hankl had mixed feelings. Hankl mutters the words Luana, and the image of his wife surfaces in his mind. He wants to see her again, to bring colour to the world. Dragon Owl asks if Hankl is sinking into negativity again. Hankl doesn't respond. Being in the presence of the divine dragon is like being teased with meat on a hook. Hankl chased every solution to save his wife. Curses, meteors, magic, magical devices, all of them failed. Now he searched for the dragon heart, said to cure any illness. With this, he could awaken his wife. Hankl tells Dragon Owl to leave him alone. Dragon Owl says he's trying to help Hankl. We see that Hankl is on Dragon Owl's back and they're currently riding high in the sky. Dragon Owl was flying at a very large height, and the reason for that was because if Hankl tried to attack Dragon Owl and take his dragon heart, they would both fall and die. Hankl says, what if he is reckless and does it anyway? Dragon Owl says that he won't because Hankl is a decent man. Dragon Owl says that decent people understand fear. Hankl is shocked that he's being called decent. Hankl had become a traitor of the world. He never swore allegiance to Priscilla, nor did he know what worth she saw in him. However, he never doubted that she possessed the perfect qualities to lead the Lagunican kingdom. However, that hope died when she died in Wallachia. Hankl fell into despair, and Owl offered him the dragon heart. The only catch was that he would become the enemy of the world. Now Hankl clinged to this hope. To call him decent was far off the mark. Dragon Owl asks if Hankl knows why he is so tough, and Hankl goes silent. And Dragon Owl says, did he say something he shouldn't have? The divine dragon referred to Hankl's body. Hankl, of course, knew the reason. Among many of the sins he committed, this was one of the heaviest. 15 years ago, that was the beginning of the Astria family's fracture. Teresa van Astria went to fight the White Well, and during the fight her blessing was transferred, and she died. During that time, the king's niece was kidnapped by the king's brother. That night, Hankl committed a significant betrayal, and failed in a way that rendered that betrayal even more meaningless. This form he bore was punishment. Hankl tells Owl it's none of his business. As they flew, Dragon Owl suddenly flew downwards. Hankl held onto Dragon Owl, and Dragon Owl swung a punch, smashing a building. You've got to be kidding me, Dragon Owl states. The dragon claws that is stronger than most swords were deflected by none other than Wilhelm van Astria. This scene changes. Thanks, Wilhelm says, after barely deflecting the dragon claws. Dragon Owl says that's something that people can't block. Most people seeing Volcanica would kneel. After all, Volcanica was currently peering into the destroyed building. Felt agrees with Dragon Owl. We see that Felt is currently free. In other words, Dragon Owl flew here to save Felt. And it seems that this was all planned by Ye the whole time, which would bring, of course, Dragon Owl away from the real human Owl. Hence why Ye was saying that she was getting in the way. Wilhelm says that Volcanica seems different, but Dragon Owl says that you can change in 3 days, and after all, it's been 40 years. Wilhelm calls out to Hankl, asking why he is hiding his face. Wilhelm says, let me guess, by helping Owl you'll be given the dragon blood to awaken your wife. You're being short-sighted. Stating that Owl betrayed the country and Priscilla, do you believe that he will keep his word? Dragon Owl tries to chime in, but Wilhelm says that this is a matter which does not concern him. Wilhelm says that this is typical for Hankl, always running away. However, Hankl tells him to shut up, saying he will do anything for Luana. Hankl rose and pointed at Wilhelm, showing fire. Wilhelm excelled, seeing that Hankl had some fire and desire to fight. Wilhelm asks if Hankl has any rebuttal apart from shouting like a fool, asking if his eyes had been clouded by the hope he is seeing. Hankl shrinked back. This was normal for Hankl. No matter what, when he faced his father, he would always shrink back. Felt confirms what Hankl wants to do, in other words, to get the dragon blood. Wilhelm apologizes to Felt for having to answer for his disgraceful son. Wilhelm states that many have seen Volcanica attack a building with unrestrained claws, and it will be a huge problem for the country. Dragonau says it's fine if the Dragon Kingdom becomes the Lion Kingdom. Wilhelm asks Volcanica to do his best to save the world, and if he cannot, then Volcanica, like Hankl, has been deceived, and so therefore Wilhelm will stop him. Wilhelm readies his swords. He knows he could probably only deflect around 3 attacks from Volcanica, so he would need to simply dodge the attacks or deflect them even better. Dragonau says, isn't there something better to do than fighting? And Wilhelm says he will once again pass the legend. Hankl says, Father, you don't mean? Hearing this, Wilhelm closes his eyes. He doesn't believe Volcanica will attack him during this. Wilhelm thought back to the funeral. The son Hankl did not attend, and the father Wilhelm too spiritless to drag him there. However, a young Reinhard says to Wilhelm, don't worry, grandfather. Grandmother wasn't the sword saint when she died, so the sword saint didn't lose, so you don't need to worry. After all, the sword saint never loses. That's what father told me. The words of a child, Wilhelm mutters. Wilhelm knew he had to reach the pinnacle. There was no other way to bring the sword saint back to being human. He sought from his blade even more power, so that he can once again surpass the legends from before. Sword Demon, Wilhelm Trias, Divine Dragon, Volcanica. At the mention of their names, Sword and Dragon Claw collided, and with that, the chapter ends.